We're at Neve Yerushalayim. We're doing the Mystical Hebrew Alphabet series. We're going through letters of the Hebrew alphabet, shapes and meanings. We're now in the letter Beit. And where we left off was that if Beit is the letter of connection or relation, positive or negative, it should be facing the goal. Aleph represents God's oneness. Why didn't the Almighty graphically design the Beit open or facing what you're here to connect to? Good is that which connects me to God. Evil is that which distances me. Instead, God graphically designed the Beit with its back to the goal, ignoring the Aleph and facing the wrong way. So the answer to that is found in a dream given to Jacob, Yaakov, when he stole the blessings from his twin brother Esau. Abraham had a son named Yitzchak. Isaac, we'll call him Yitzchak. Yitzchak had a son named Yaakov, and Yaakov was a twin, but he was the younger of the two. His brother Esau, we're going to call Esav in Hebrew, and therefore Yaakov steals the blessings from his twin brother Esav. Esav says, I'm going to kill him. Yaakov flees out of the land of Israel, lays down to sleep on a hill, which is a hill where decades earlier his grandfather tried to sacrifice his father, and 1,000 years in the future it'll be where the temple is built in downtown Jerusalem. So when he lays down to sleep there, God gives him a prophetic dream. And every level of the dream is introduced by the word hine. Hine is a code word in the Torah. It's usually translated as behold. Hine is behold. But really it means look deeper and I'll show you something you didn't see before. So he lays down to sleep and God says, Hine, look deeper. You didn't pick any hill to lay down and sleep at. You picked a hill where heaven and earth connect. And that's why God shows a vision of a ladder going from heaven down to earth. So a ladder implies connection. Then there's another hine, look deeper, and I'll show you that there are angels going up and down the ladder. And that's problematic because we said last time that angels are like puppets. They're just spiritual forces God wills into existence to carry out God's will. They don't have an independent will. They can't go against God. So therefore, if they're just puppets, God creates trillions upon trillions upon trillions of these angels to carry out every physical, chemical, and biological process of running the universe. God hides behind layers of these things to give people free will, at least if you're spiritually tapped in. It creates free will. If you're not spiritually tapped in, then the system itself is just something we study, but it doesn't have the same impact. So therefore, why are the angels going up and down? Because we know based on a simple understanding of the spiritual realm, if heaven has lots of levels, and this is the bottom of the spiritual realm here, and this is our universe with its billions of galaxies, each galaxy has billions of stars, and here's a human being down here on the planet Earth. Angels are spiritual forces which God wills into existence to carry out his will. So they should be coming down to do whatever it is God wants, whatever it is, photosynthesis in a plant leaf, or electrons orbiting a nucleus or whatever. All these systems are supposed to be coming down to do whatever it is God wants, and then when they're done, they go back. So the angels shouldn't be going up and coming down in this prophetic dream. God should show Jacob a vision of the angels coming down and going up. So why is God showing the spiritual realm running backwards? That's where we left off with last class. Okay, so the answer is actually found in a verse in the Torah that God uses when he describes his creating human beings. He says he's going to create us in his image. And the Hebrew phrase for in his image is the phrase B'Tselem Elohim. So let's just transliterate that. This is the word B'Tselem, and this is Elohim, which is the name of God. So B'Tselem would translate as in the image of God. So the question everybody asks is, how can you be in the image of something that has no image? You can't be in the image of God. There's no image to be in the image of. So what does B'Tselem Elohim mean? It can't be just simply, even on a good day, you're not going to look like God, right? So what in the world does this phrase refer to? So what's the standard answer? What have people been taught typically? You're in the image of God because... The standard answer for what it means to be in the image of God is that unlike other creations that are not described as being in God's image, we're the only ones that can emulate godly traits. God's slow to anger, we can be slow to anger. God's loving, we can be loving. God is forgiving, we're forgiving. God, whatever it is, does chesed, we can do chesed. So the idea of being in the image of God means that unlike plants or animals or whatever, we could be godlike. Animals can never achieve a godlike emulating God's traits. That's the standard answer people give to what it means to be in the image of God. A deeper idea of what it means to be in the image of God is, if we go back pre-day one of creation, we actually did this in the Olive class. If we go back before there was a universe, before there was time, matter, space, and energy, when all there was the infinite oneness, infinite perfection of God. So when God wills reality into existence, the only reason it exists is because God wants it to exist. So we learned when we did the Olive class that unlike science, which says that creation is 13.8 billion years ago, according to Judaism, God is the only thing that has real existence. Nothing else has independent existence. So if anything else is going to exist, God has to be the source of its existence. Does that make sense? According to Judaism, God is the only thing that has a real reality. Meaning, God is the only thing that doesn't require a source for its existence. God exists because God exists. So if you want there to be a universe with time, matter, space, and energy, time, matter, space, and energy do not have independent existence. They come from God. God has to will them into existence because they don't have a natural independent existence. Does that make sense? You following this, everyone? Fine. So therefore, creation's not 13.8 billion years ago. According to Judaism, creation has to be constant. Because any instant God doesn't will for there to be a reality beyond himself, that reality cannot exist. The metaphor we used when we did the class on Aleph, and we discussed this, was we're going to pretend God's like a projector, like a movie projector, and the spiritual realm and our universe with its billions of galaxies are all a constant projection. Creation, according to Judaism, is constant. According to science, it was a single event, whatever it is, 13.8 billion years ago. So we believe creation is every single instant. So therefore, think like a movie. Every frame's being re-willed into existence every single instant, but it's so fast that you can't have a sense that it's happening. You follow? So therefore, if God's a source of reality constantly, that reality can't turn around and affect God back. God's beyond affectability. I'll give you an example. If you're watching a movie and there's a car chase and a car hits a tree and blows up, does the explosion in the film damage the projector in the back of the room? No, because it's only a movie. It can't turn around and affect where it's coming from. You follow? Or if you close your eyes and imagine the Titanic sinking, you're not going to get wet because the reality in your head of the Titanic sinking is coming from you constantly, right? It's not. So therefore, when God creates the world and runs it, it doesn't turn around and affect him. God is not affectable. Which means when God makes a decision, it's above and beyond any influence or bias. God makes perfect decisions. There's no way to influence or bias God.
So what's the point of prayer?
Exactly, that's what everybody says. What's the point of prayer? So prayer is not to change God's mind. God does not have a mind to change. God's outside of time anyway, so there's no change by God at all. Torah and mitzvahs, including prayer, are not designed for God. They cannot affect God. When you learn Torah or do mitzvahs, or when you pray, you're changing your relationship to God, but you're not changing God. So therefore, it's all about you're changing that nature of that connection versus disconnection, and prayer is bringing you close, and mitzvahs bringing you close, and sins are distancing you, whatever. But God, in his infinite oneness, never changes.
So, they say like, pray, the heavens will open up and he'll listen to your prayers and he might change his mind or...
Yeah, but that's only a human metaphor to help your brain wrap itself around what happens when you do certain things, when you do certain mitzvahs. You want to see a result. But remember, what your brain can't wrap itself around is that Hashem's outside of time. So what you did 10 years ago and what you're going to do 10 years from now, it's all the same. So therefore, what Hashem's saying is, in terms of your relationship with me, in relationship A, it could be that the best thing for you is for me not to give you X. But if you work on your closeness through prayer, through this, through that, if you ask, if you say please, if you work on yourself, then you change the nature of that relationship. In that new relationship, then the best thing for you is to get X. But you're not changing God.
Right.
okay?
It's just like how come like yeah, when someone's sick and we pray for it.
Right, so it could be as part of the mechanisms that the world needs for the next stage of whatever they're supposed to go through, we're trying to create a different relation with Hashem where that will happen. Okay, good. So therefore, what we mean by that is that Hashem has perfect free will, meaning anything Hashem decides is not due to influence or bias. And as a gift, he allows human beings to imitate that. Which means human beings have a godlike free will that minerals, plants, and animals were not given when they were created, because the phrase in God's image is not used by other creations, it's only used by us. Which means when we make decisions, God says, I'm going to allow your decisions to be godlike, and that's so powerful that you have to be very careful how you use your free will. Because growing up, you might think, well, of course human beings have free will. We can do whatever we want. But God would never allow me to do things he doesn't want. It must be that my free will is to do what God wants. And according to Judaism, that's a misconception. God-like free will is to do what you want, even when God does not agree with it. Now, why is he giving us this gift? Because ultimately, he doesn't want to be a dictator or a master and have us think of ourselves as slaves. He wants a relationship with human beings, and therefore we always use the metaphor husband-wife. Hashem's the husband, the Jewish people are like the wife, Mount Sinai was like the marriage. Right? When a man marries a woman, he gives her something of value. We give a ring, but Hashem had something more valuable than the ring. He gave his Torah. So therefore, think of Judaism as trying to perfect a partnership with Hashem. And therefore, Hashem says, I'm going to make you similar to me. If you're not similar to me, we have nothing in common. We can't have a relationship. So therefore, he gives you godlike free will. And since it's in the image of God, you have to be very careful how you use it, because you really can make decisions which God does not want you to do, but he's not going to stop you. Because if he stops you every time you try to do something he doesn't want you to do, you're no longer in his image. Think about it for a second. Does anything stop God from doing what God wants to do? No. So if you're going to emulate godliness and have God-like free will, then it can't be that means the free will to do what God wants, but not the free will to do what God doesn't want, because that's not God-like, because there's nothing holding God back from doing what he wants. In other words, the free will ability to do what God wants, but not to do what God doesn't, is not called free will. That's a joke. So, what can you see from this? When a woman's pregnant and her doctor says, you know what, while you're pregnant, don't smoke cigarettes, don't drink alcohol, it's not good for the baby, she shouldn't say, it's not your body, it's none of your business, don't tell me what to do. And if she smokes cigarettes and drinks alcohol, then you can't point your finger at God and say, oh, how could he do this to this developing baby? God says, 1 second, I gave you free will, I made you similar to me. You weren't making good use of your free will decisions, so you created a damage. And therefore, if you walk away from this class with a very important axiom of Judaism, to be in God's image means that free will is no joke. You have to be very careful how you make decisions. Now, it doesn't mean that ultimately you have the free will to do things that are against God's will, that cross a certain threshold that he will not allow you to do. In other words, if you were president of the United States, he would not allow you to do an all-out, nuclear war or something like that, where you launched thousands of nuclear missiles at whatever other country the United States targets, and of course they retaliate with thousands of missiles, and the whole planet gets destroyed, and next thing you know, there's this ice age or whatever it is, and there's nothing left on the planet. So that can't be, because God promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they would always have descendants, and one day they would be gathered back to the land of Israel, and there has to be a happily ever after ending that Hashem promised them that they would have descendants. So you don't have the free will ability to violate that promise that God made to the patriarchs. My favorite example of this is in the Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 60s. So the world has never come as close to all-out nuclear war as when the Russians put missiles in Cuba and the U.S. government blockaded the island. So Kennedy didn't know it, and Khrushchev didn't know it. They didn't know how it was going to end, but any Orthodox Jew who learned Torah could tell you that this cannot end with the destruction of the planet Earth, because that would violate God's promise. What no one could have told you is, well, could the U.S. have launched a missile in Moscow, and could have Moscow launched a missile at New York and then called it quits at that point? The answer is yeah, that was possible, I guess, but not total destruction. So our free will does have limits, but for the most part, we understand that God-like free will is the ability to do what we want. Now, any questions on that? Because once God says, listen, I'm going to make you similar to me, I'm going to make you in my image, I'm going to give you the gift of free will, then what God does is he takes his machinery. So let's pretend in heaven there's all this spiritual machinery. Okay? Imagine like machines up in the spiritual realm with wheels and levers and dials and little lights flashing or whatever. I'm making that up, but let's take the spiritual machinery that Hashem uses to run the world, right? Friction, gravity, weather, physics, chemistry, and biology. So God says, now that I made you similar to me, now that you're in my image and your free will is godlike, I'm going to run this world with you. Now that we're similar, we're going to run the world together. That's called a relationship. So if you pretend there's an imaginary wire that's connected from your free will decisions up into the spiritual realm, when you make positive free will decisions, when you learn Torah and you keep mitzvahs, you don't realize it, but you're generating millions of positive spiritual volts that are traveling up a imaginary wire, positively impacting the spiritual machinery, and the world's running better. Your Torah, your mitzvahs, your kindness, your charity that you give, all those things are creating positive voltage, which is affecting how the world runs, and there's going to be less drought in Africa. There's going to be less disease in Asia. There's going to be less global warming. There's going to be whatever it is. Now, unfortunately, once your free will is wired into the machinery, so a wire is a wire is a wire, meaning the wire doesn't really care what goes up and down. So you have to be very careful, because if you disconnect from godliness, if you damage yourself or damage other people, if you're not using Torah mitzvahs properly, you lie, cheat, and steal, or whatever it is, so that disconnection from godliness generates millions of negative spiritual volts, which travel up that wire, negatively impact the machinery, and the world becomes a worse place. Now there is more drought in Africa, and there is more hurricanes and tsunamis, and there is more disease in South America, and there is whatever, more global warming, name it. I mean, so it's not to say that there's not a biochemical reason for these things, but what Torah says is, yeah, but there's a spiritual basis for how the world runs as well, and that's the essential one. So you have to be very careful what you do with your free will decision making, because all your decisions, and you can make 1,000 a day, are really impacting on how the world runs. When I lived in Toronto, my wife and I ran a beginner's synagogue in a northern suburb where I would do home study groups and one-on-one learning with Jews who were not religious. So a typical question would be, someone would say to me, hey, all this Torah and mitzvah stuff is fine for you because you're Orthodox, but if I'm not religious and I go down to my basement of my house and I do something that God doesn't want me to do, whatever it is, I don't know, name something, but nobody sees me, so I'm not misleading anybody. So what difference does it make to you? You do your Torah mitzvah thing, you're religious. I'll do my whatever it is in the basement, and I won't mislead anybody. It doesn't affect you. It's none of your business. And what you see from this part of the class is that's not true. What you do in your basement, if it's damaging yourself or somebody else or whatever, it does affect the world I live in. It does affect the world my children grow up in. So I do have a vested interest in what other people do, because there's no such thing as making a decision in a vacuum. So before this class, you might have thought, well, when I learn Torah and keep mitzvahs, I'll connect to God. When I lie, cheat, and steal, and I damage myself or other people, I'll disconnect from God. But it's none of your business. The answer is no, it's not true. When you learn Torah and do mitzvahs, you're creating a positive spiritual voltage, which is lifting everything up with you and making the world a better place. When you damage yourself and damage other people and disconnect from God, you're generating negative voltage, which is damaging everyone else with you and making the world a worse place. And therefore, there's no such thing, according to Judaism, as ever making a decision in a vacuum. There's no decisions in a vacuum. All your decisions affect everybody. Okay, there was a couple of questions. Did I answer?
If I understood, I'm not sure I'm understanding right. You said it does affect God's decision.
This never changed, correct? The machinery's down here in the spiritual realm.
That's part of God, though.
One second, time out. Let's go back up, let's say 10 minutes. God in his infinite oneness is not affectable. God just is. There's no time. There's no before or after. There's no matter. There's no space. There's no energy. So we're going to call God a projector. And now the spiritual realm, with all its thousands of levels and all its spiritual forces and all its mechanisms, are a constant projection. You, me, and the rest of the universe with its billions of galaxies are a constant projection. So the way Hashem runs the projection is that when you make decisions as a projection, your decisions affect the spiritual projection, which affects the projection we're in.
The projection is part of God, though.
So in order for you not to get confused, because our brains don't understand how infinite oneness can create a universe with trillions of different things in it, keep the idea that there's God and there's what God wants. So the reality you say is God is simpler to say it's what God wants and not God. In other words, we don't say that this marker is God. We say God wants there to be a world with atoms and whatever and subatomic particles that create a marker that has black ink in it. So that's something God projects into existence. But that's not God, that's a result of God's will. You will get in less trouble brain-wise, mentally, if you distinguish God from what God wants. Because otherwise, your brain will get all messed up because you'll look at things that are disgusting and say, well, that's God. So your brain really can't handle that idea. So look at the reality that God wills to exist beyond himself. That's a constant willing of God into existence. And then there's something that transcends all this called God. Easier to, yeah.
Does it say that like our actions affect like God's decision, but it doesn't because it's like the system.
In other words, what we're seeing by this drawing is God's will, when he created human beings to imitate him, is that a part of that godliness that's a gift to us is that God's will is that our will shall affect how the world runs. And how the world runs is a part of what God wants. So he's allowing us to be partners with that running of the world. Now the question everybody asks at this point is this guy Jewish? This guy who's making free will decisions, who's wired into the spiritual realm, is he Jewish? Or is he your next door neighbor in New York, New Jersey, Montreal, wherever you're from? In other words, is this guy anybody? Or is it we, the Jewish people, who are creating a spiritual impact through our Torah and mitzvahs and affecting drought in Africa and everything? What would you guys say?
I think it's both.
Why would you think it's both?
Because the non-Jews also have, like, let's say the 7 Noahide laws, like they also have a...
That's true logically, but you can even say simpler than that, why it would be everyone as opposed to
They're
Jews.
all related to God.
Correct. Because this statement, I'm going to make humans in my image, was not said about Jews. There weren't any Jews. Jews come later in history. The Jewish people come later in history. When God says I'm going to create humans in my image, it means that all human beings are in the image of God, including your next door neighbor who's not Jewish. And therefore, all human beings have free will, and all human beings have their free will wired into the spiritual mechanism. Meaning everybody's wired into the machinery. Okay, is that clear? That's very important.
And how we say like always like Jews are responsible.
Okay, good. So that's the next question. If that's true, is the connection the same? And the answer is like this. I want you to pretend that when God gave us the gift of free will, that free will gift was like a muscle. Pretend every human being has a free will muscle. Okay, I'm making this up. Now, if you take your free will muscle and work out with weights, you can make your free will decision making much more powerful and send up more voltage. If you don't work out with weights, your free will muscle will get weak. And the voltage you send up will be weak, low voltage, because your decisions are weak. For example, if you're not working out with weights and you say, oh, what should I do tonight? I have an hour free. Well, I could go watch a rerun of Seinfeld or a rerun of Friends. Did I just date myself for those examples? Do you guys, in the 1990s maybe, were you guys around then? Whatever. Did my examples make sense? Or I don't know any TV shows in the last 20 years. Okay? So let's say I watch a rerun of Seinfeld. So what's that worth, 1.5 volts? Or I watch a rerun of Friends. What's that? 0.75 volts? I'm not picking sides here, but you got the problem? Okay, but we Jews have 613 weights. And when we work out with our 613 weights, those are our mitzvahs, our free will muscle gets more powerful, which means if I have an hour free tonight, instead of watching television reruns, I could visit the sick, take food to the poor, go out with my parents, learn Torah with my kids, take my wife out to dinner. All these things are worth millions of volts.
So let's say there's like a really holy guy, so if he does one Avera, it's much powerful than if, like, let's say I do an Avera?
Why aren't you a holy person?
Sorry?
Aren't you a holy person?
I'm just saying, like, a tzaddik or someone.
Okay, so let's draw it to the weight metaphor to its conclusion based on what you just said, right? So if we Jews have 613 weights, we're building a very powerful free will muscle that's sending millions of volts. Non-Jews only have 7 weights, right? They only have 7 mitzvot. Now, for most of history, they've been keeping none. When society gets together and institutes laws, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, if they're not doing it because God said to, and they're doing it because society needs to function, that's not called fulfilling their mitzvahs. That's not called keeping the 7 mitzvahs. It's nice that it overlaps, but that's not where the voltage is. The voltage is because God wants them to do it. You follow? So therefore, if they have only 7 weights, and for most of history they haven't been working out with those 7 weights, that means that your non-Jewish next door neighbor is in the image of God, is wired in, but his voltage is minimal. Whereas you and I, when we're working out with weights and building powerful free will muscles, so our voltage is much more powerful, positive or negative. Right? If you're training as a surgeon, so you can do a lot of things to fix up people, but you can do a lot of damage if you mess up in surgery. You follow? So therefore, when things go wrong on the planet, we Orthodox Jews are not quick to point our finger at other nations and say, oh yeah, they Hashem is punishing them because they did X, Y, and Z, whatever. No, we're quick to point at ourselves and say, if we Orthodox Jews, if we Torah observant Jews, were working out with our weights better, if we were learning more Torah, if we were giving more charity, if we were speaking less lashon hara, gossip, if we were doing more chesed, so the world would be running better. And therefore, we look at ourselves when things go wrong on the planet and say, hey, we could fix this. And we're very, very hesitant to point at other nations and say, oh yeah, they're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. Because their voltage is minimal in terms of fixing, and their voltage is minimal in terms of damage. Because you just don't know what they're doing out there. So that's why Jews who learn Torah should not be pointing at Jews who are ignorant of Torah and saying, well, you're damaging this, you're damaging that. When a secular Jew walks into McDonald's and eats a cheeseburger or something like that that's not kosher, he's not sending up lots of negative voltage because there's no God in the equation there. What does he know about kosher? What does he know about God? What does he know about cheeseburgers? He's going there because it's $1.99 and it's quick. So therefore, he's not creating the damage that a Torah observant Jew would do if he snuck into a McDonald's in Omaha, Nebraska, because he thought no one was looking, and said, okay, I'll save myself a lot of trouble and just pay $1.99 for a cheeseburger. That can generate millions of negative volts. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that mean that it only affects because we're conscious of what we're doing? Like the person that, the Jew that doesn't, is ignorant and doesn't know that it has a certain effect, the fact that he's eating that cheeseburger. Like you said that it doesn't have the same.
Right, because remember, if working out with weights is what builds up your free will muscle, then you have to understand what it means to work out with those weights. You have to know God exists. You have to know Torah is true. You have to know these are 613 weights you're supposed to do. If you accidentally or unintentionally violate these weights because you have no clue they're there, so voltage is largely based on intention as opposed to action. So therefore, if you're not rebelling against God because you're a secular Jew who doesn't know whether God exists, or you're not rebelling against God's rules because you have no clue what they are, so should you be eating the non-kosher cheeseburger at McDonald's? No, of course not. But in terms of negative voltage, it's like almost being like you're not aware of what the weights are supposed to be, so you're not sending up a volt in either direction. So yeah, of course it's not the right thing to do, but it's not creating drought in Africa the way you or I would if we disconnected from godliness and created the damage. Yeah.
You said that when we create negative voltage, whenever you say drought in Africa, how does it connect? Is it like a chain reaction? Is that what you mean?
I'm just pulling out examples that you and I can easily imagine that, you see, the big issue for the last 20 years has been, I think, global warming. That's the one that's getting the most coverage. And I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you about global warming. I have no clue about global warming. But all I can tell you is from a Torah perspective, yes, carbon dioxide emissions can create more greenhouse effect or whatever. But if you only look at it from a carbon dioxide emission perspective, you're going to miss the possible fix, because the fix really is not based totally on carbon dioxide emissions. God says, listen, I know how to design a planet that can handle 7 billion people without falling apart. I'm God, I'm good at this sort of thing. The planet can handle the population without hurricanes and tsunamis and earthquakes and droughts and global warming. Hashem says it's supposed to run correctly. If it's not running correctly, look at your behavior over the last few centuries or whatever it is, 1,000 years, and see if your free will decision makings are generating negative voltage, which is causing my system not to run correctly. But to fix it, if you only focus on the chemistry or the science, you're missing the spiritual basis of the problem. That's what Judaism is saying. So if you're asking me, how does it, when an Orthodox Jew learns Torah or gives tzedakah, is it directly connected to drought in Africa? I don't have a clue. I do know that it's directly connected to the machine, and the machine affects how everything runs. So why this mitzvah affects that, or this action affects over there, that you'd have to ask Hashem. I don't. The system's so complicated, I don't know how you figure it out. Okay? But remember, good is that which connects me, evil is that which distances me, and you're seeing the distance is creating negative voltage. That's a critical stage in our understanding of the process. So that actually answers the question we had before when we looked at Yaakov's dream. And we said, 1 second, if angels are puppets and God sends them down to do whatever it is angels do, and when they're done they go back, then the dream should have shown Yaakov seeing the ladder, that's a connection to heaven, and the angel should be coming down and then going up. Why is God prophetically showing Jacob the system running backwards? And now you see the system's not running backwards, the dream's accurate. The prophetic dream's accurate. Because when I gave my metaphor, I used your free will is godlike and you're wired into the spiritual realm and you're generating positive or negative voltage. But wires and voltage are a 20th century metaphor. When God gave Torah 3,300 years ago, there were no wires. People didn't know about voltage. So his wire is a ladder and his voltage are his spiritual forces. So that means when you and I make decisions, we're generating spiritual force like these angels, so to speak, and they're traveling into the spiritual realm. They're impacting the machinery. So what God's teaching Jacob is that when you make decisions, those decisions are being carried up to the spiritual realm, affecting how the spiritual realm runs, and the future's coming down differently, and it's responding to you. And if God put it in the Torah, it's not only true for Jacob, it's true for all of us. So therefore, the voltage of our decisions affects the spiritual realm, and how the future comes out is based on us. So therefore, the angels are not running backwards. They're actually running in the correct direction. Okay, any questions on that? We'll continue with more on the letter Beit and the direction of the letter Beit tomorrow.